So when I was in seventh grade, I was diagnosed with a heart condition called Marfan syndrome. And Marfan syndrome is a condition that dilates your aorta, which means that I can't lift heavy weights or do heavy exercise, or my heart will explode. So that's when I kind of realized that sports probably weren't the best path for me, and I joined First Lego League instead. And so I did First Lego League in seventh and eighth grade, and I just continued it throughout high school. I actually joined First Lego League first because I did get diagnosed during the Lego League season, and that's why I continued with it. But one of my friends who I danced with was already in Lego League, and she encouraged me to join. So I've held a lot of hats during my entire time on my FRC team. My freshman year, I became the lead of our media and communications team. And then as time progressed, I was the lead of the First Tech Challenge teams in our middle schools my sophomore year. So I was the head mentor for them. And then I also became Impact Award co-lead and Outreach co-lead. And I kept that position up until this year when I became project manager of, so I oversaw all of our teams and I like handed off the outreach stuff to people who I wanted to teach into those roles. So I've done a lot. And I also um, build sometimes whenever I have time to do so. Sometimes it's challenging communicating with my teammates because robotic students first helps build your skills with communicating with your teammates, but you have to start somewhere. So, like, trying to communicate the different ideas is very challenging. But I feel like as I've stepped more into the leadership roles as time has progressed, I've been able to figure out how my different teammates communicate to each other, and I'm able to like put it into terms that we all understand, we're all on the same page. So communication is definitely very challenging, but it's always a work in progress. So if you're experiencing conflict where like you have two team members conflicting with each other, I would talk to each team member individually first before figuring it out. And then that way you're also able to decide if it's a student that needs to figure out this conflict or if you need to get a coach involved to figure it out. Because students, I believe, need to support each other and communicate with each other, but I feel like it's the coach's job to lay down the law. So that's something I would do if there was conflict between teammates. Um, yeah, but I definitely know what you're talking about. I would definitely say to just keep your calm, keep your patience with teams, even though it's challenging sometimes. And remember gracious professionalism, even if you don't want to be kind sometimes. It's always important to remember that you have to be kind in the moment and then you can be angry later. But you have to think about you're doing it for your team. You're making strategy so your team can get better. Like it's finding the good in those negative moments that I think is really important. So I first learned about the award my freshman year because the senior, one of the seniors my freshman year was a finalist when she was a junior. So that's when I first learned about it and I realized it was something that I really wanted to strive for. And my coach is the one that nominates me for Dean's List. So when she told me she was going to nominate me for Dean's List, I just sent her a list of all of my accomplishments. So everything I'm involved in, all of my leadership opportunities, volunteer hours, all my positions on the team, accomplishments on the team, and even outside of First as well. And she was able to pick out the best ones and apply it to the Dean's List questions. I definitely say my biggest accomplishment is writing my children's book. Um, Last year, I wrote a children's book called Susie Wants to Be an Engineer, and it's about a young girl who wants to be an engineer, but she gets teased by all the other kids when she's a girl. And then she grows up and joins a robotics team and realizes that's where she's meant to be. I wrote it and I brought one of my very talented teammates with me on it to do the illustrations. And this November, it was finally published, and this January, we were able to distribute it to every Dubuque, which is the city I'm from in Iowa, an elementary classroom in all Iowa counties, an elementary classroom in a low socioeconomic county in all states in the U.S. And we partnered with some FRC teams and personal connections in Canada, Brazil, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Australia, and South Korea and South Africa.
So
So,
it's like an international level?
yes, yep.
Wow, that's
So,
really impressive.
uh, yes, it's something I am very excited about. Last year, when I first wrote the book, it was just a concept, but I wanted to take it to so much more because before I wrote the book and I like got the idea, I researched into if other teams have already done it, and all of the ones I found were about like fictional robots or like space creatures and relating it back to robotics. But I wanted to tell a story that was raw and real and that girls could actually like relate to. So my future plans, I'm going to Iowa State University to major in biomedical engineering. Um, I'm not sure what I want to do with it yet. I always wanted to go to physician's assistant school, but I think I'm going to work in prosthetics instead. And hopefully, I hope to join a robotics club at Iowa State or like the engineering student council, something to stay in robotics while I'm there. And then there's a FRC team in the city that Iowa State is in. And so I hope to mentor them as well while I'm there. The most valuable lesson I've learned while participating in FIRST, I talked about communication earlier, but I think it's such a big thing. I feel like I've grown so much since I've been a freshman, and it's because of robotics. I also think a big skill I've learned is innovation and creativity. I'm able to keep thinking of new ideas to make something better. My mind's always turning because I want to be the best that I can. So probably communication and innovation. Advice that I would give to Dean's winners. Everybody says it, but be yourself in your interview. You don't need to dress up. I did not dress up at all for my interview. I just wore my team stuff. I didn't even dress up when I won. I was still wearing my team stuff at Worlds. So be yourself, be confident. When you walk into the room, always greet your judges, shake their hand. They may know your name, but still introduce yourself. Um, Read your essays that your coach submits for you over and over and over again. The first thing that my judges asked me was if I read my essays and if there was anything I wanted to emphasize from my essays. So since I knew my essays back in like forward and backwards, I knew what I wanted to talk about more. So know what your coach said about you. And it also helps when they ask additional questions from your essay, specifically about your essay. Your answers have to be consistent with what your coach said, otherwise it looks like you're lying. So read your essays, know them really well. They asked me in my interview what my favorite thing was outside of FIRST, and I think the answer is really important. So I answered that my favorite thing outside of first was music because I felt like it gave me a way to communicate with others without actually talking. And I was able to carry that over with my teammates because I had this new way of communicating with them and finding this safe space. Um, so think of something that you enjoy outside of robotics. And I think the last big piece of advice I would give is have a plan for what you want to do in first after high school. They almost didn't ask me this question at the end of my interview, but I think if they didn't ask me it, I wouldn't have won.